You ever wonder why the buyer's definition of success keeps changing? Now, in this one, we almost have to assume that this is going to be a longer sales cycle, right? So if you are in a situation where you can just have a one call close or a two call close, there might not be enough time to have kind of buyers changing their mind and changing kind of what they're thinking success looks like. But in most B2B selling, it's a pretty longer cycle that you're normally going through. So the idea of being able to get quick closes, that's harder, right? And so what happens is when you have a longer sales cycle, there's just more time for people to be able to shift their perspectives, their definition of success, their aspirations, etc. And as a salesperson, that can be challenging, right? Because if you think, okay, I'm helping you with A, and then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks later, it's like B, now it's C, now it's D. And so it becomes very difficult to be able to keep track of what exactly are we doing? What do you want? What are you trying to solve, et cetera? And how can you be a good partner if the person that you're trying to sell to really doesn't have clarity? And this is a pretty common problem that people run into, especially when you have multiple buyers, committees, et cetera. There's just a lot of cooks in the kitchen, a lot of opinions, et cetera. Now, let's look at why. And I think from a why perspective, there's kind of two dimensions that drive some of this kind of changing needs. And on one side, what you have is reality. Okay. And so from a reality perspective, this is the world they're in today. This is their day-to-day, their operations, their process, et cetera. It's the real world of what they live in. And I think a lot of times sellers don't fully appreciate this because they're so busy trying to get you to the nirvana state that they don't think about how difficult the reality is and how hard it is to get from here to where you want to go, right? Because you can't just snap your fingers and then boom, you achieve your goal, you've transformed the organization. It's tough. And so that's their reality. Now, on the other side, what you have is kind of their goals or their aspirations. And so from a buyer perspective, that's their kind of end state that they want to get to. Those are the goals that they want to achieve, the milestones, et cetera, right? And so this is where aspiration lives. And where the challenge comes in is that sometimes you can have changes on either side, right? So the obvious one is on the goals side. These goals can shift. And so when the goals shift, all of a sudden, it's like, wait, I thought we were trying to solve for this, now it's this. And there's a lot of reasons why goals change. It could be there was a shift in the market. Maybe there was a change in leadership. Maybe the board said something, right? So there's a lot of reasons why you kind of change your destination. And so that can be a bit of a moving target. But you can also have changes over here too. Because, if the company just experienced a layoff, if budgets were cut, if there was a reorg, if there was a merger, right? So there's a lot of changes that can happen in reality that make this more difficult to get there. And so that's what you have is both of these have the potential of shifting. And as a seller, it's difficult to keep track of where you're going. And so part of what you're trying to do in selling is you're trying to establish a clear vision for that person, right? So if we kind of map vision in the center, because from a vision perspective, what you want to do through storytelling is to be able to say, I fully understand where you are and kind of what you're struggling with, but I also understand where you want to get to. And so let's talk about the most logical and efficient path to get you from here to here, right? And if the buyer can kind of buy into this vision and buy into the journey, they're going to buy into you. They're going to say yes. The challenge, though, is when you have kind of this vision variability, right? And again, it could be either side. So when you're trying to paint this compelling picture and compelling journey, yet you have moving pieces, it can be difficult because now the story is going to change. Or if you keep telling the same story, it's not going to resonate. And so it's just important to be able to kind of constantly check in with your prospects to be able to say, hey, before we start this meeting, I just want to understand, has there been any kind of material changes in your environments the last time we talked? Or, we discussed last time that you're trying to achieve Are there any changes to that? And so even just the ability to kind of quickly level set to be able to say, let's make sure we're on the same page each time that we communicate. And if so, then you're going to reduce this, right? Because you're going to have a clear vision of what's what. And you start to kind of train them to say, if there's a shift, that's okay. Just let me know and we can kind of adjust the talk track. We can adjust the roadmap. But if you don't kind of know these shifts, then you're not going to be aware. And I think why sellers maybe don't do this is sometimes they don't want to know these changes because they have a good vision. It's a good way to sell for them. And so they don't really want to complicate it with changes and stuff. They just want the quick win. But it's always best to be able to ground your sales pitch in reality and to their changing goals. So the more that it can be reflective of their real world, the more chance you're going to have of getting them as a real customer.